Okay, so we'll begin. We're holding actually towards the end already of Pirkei Avot, even though there's an additional Perek Shishi, but the main Pirkei Avot consists of 5 Perakim, and we're holding towards the end of Perek Hamishi, Mishnah Yudaled. Here we're dealing again with a category of 4 types of individuals. Very interesting ideas, very interesting differences that surface among various people. We don't always take notice of them, so the Mishnah is an interesting Mishnah because it gives us a little bit of an idea of why people are the way they are. Their attitudes are different, their outlook is different, and we see this in various areas of our life. So the following 4 individuals, Arba Midot Beolchei Lebet HaMidrash, 4 individuals who attend, whether regularly or not, the Bet Midrash, a house of learning. It doesn't necessarily mean that all 4 attend. It just means 4 attitudes, 4 ways that can be distinguished quite a bit amongst Jewish people. Those who value the Bet Midrash more, those who value it less, those who make a point to attend a shiur, those that once in a while attend, those that don't attend at all. And it gives us a little bit of a perspective of why this is so. So the first individual is Olech ve'eno oseh. Olech ve'eno oseh means you have an individual who actually attends regularly. It's important to him for some reason. We don't know what the reason is. But somehow he gets himself to go. He has no problem going. So Olech means he goes, he attends. Bet Midrash, you can apply it, you can extend it to mean also Bet HaKnesset, it can mean shul, house of learning, house of prayer. It would be pretty much the same idea, even though Bet Midrash is more specific to learning, and Bet HaKnesset is more specific to prayer. So he holech ve'eno oseh. In other words, there's something good in what he does, but it's incomplete, because eno oseh means that he does not do. Now, what does he not do? Well, it could be that somebody goes, hears a shiur, but does not necessarily apply it in his life. He does not use the learning to advance himself in his observance. He just goes and he sits and he listens, pays attention, of course, and also. Now, this individual could also be a type of individual that regularly attends Bet HaKnesset, but does not fulfill many mitzvot either. He's the type of Jew that will always be there. He may like the kiddush of the shul. Yeah, that's why he comes. But he does not also, he's not the doer type. The doer could also mean he's not the active type. Active meaning whether it's active in the shul, he does not contribute his membership dues, he does not necessarily help out, he's not necessarily a hazan or read the Torah. And also is a pretty expansive area in life where a person can or cannot be active. And since we're talking about here Judaism, Yahadut, it can make a difference. Obviously, when a person does not do, it's incomplete. But at the very least, we don't completely minimize the little bit that he does. Schar halicha beyado. The rabbis tell us he gets some reward for going. Don't look at it as, oh, what is he doing this for? What's the purpose of it? No, something is better than nothing. That's part of the idea of what this Mishnah is saying. Something is better than nothing. Don't minimize it. Don't criticize him too much. I mean, you can always convince him to do more, but he's the type that will have no problem attending. He will have some difficulty doing. So Rabbi tells us, schar halicha biyado. Why does he get schar halicha, reward for going? For walking to the Bet HaMikdash, to walking for the Bet HaKnesset, you get a reward? Yes, rabbis tell us 2 people go to shul, one walks further than the other one. The one that walked further has schar halicha. He has more, he's rewarded more because of his walking. It's greater effort on his part. So there is such a thing as schar halicha. There's a reward for going. But what kind of a reward? First of all, there's a gain. Sachar is not only a reward b'shamayim, it's also a gain. What is the immediate gain? The gain is the fact that he goes. It shows that he's motivated. It shows interest. It shows that he values this. So that in itself is a good thing, because hopefully with this attitude, some positive attitude about attendance, will get him somewhere in life. In other words, this will lead to other good deeds. There's some gain by going, besides the fact that he hopefully will be in good company. Chevra tova. It definitely beats staying at home. So schar halicha biyado is not only the reward b'shamayim for having gone, for having attended, it's also for having participated. Something is to be gained by being around good people. What other gain could there be? It could be the fact that he heard the shiur, he heard halachot. He becomes more knowledgeable. Even though he may not understand everything, even though we said before he may not apply everything, Bashamayim, he will receive reward for having attended the shiur. Imagine somebody went to shiur on a regular basis, went to the Bet Midrash, he heard the rabbi speak, he heard the speech. Regardless of what it was Divrei Torah, he gets zachar for that. He attended, he heard, even though he didn't understand. So that's good to know. There is some gain by participating in a worthy cause. In this case, Bet Midrash and Bet HaKnesset. That is a central part of a Jew's life. So that's why the Bet HaMidrash is chosen here. I mean, it could be a Bet HaKnesset too. But Bet HaMidrash is where we learn. And learning is what we do all our life. And obviously we need to learn, so we need to know how to do certain things. And how to deal with certain issues that come up in life, and so forth. We don't know everything when we start off our life. So Bet Midrash is definitely an essential part of a Jew's life. Today, many Batei Knesset are also Batei Midrash, because they learn in the shul where they pray. So definitely it has great value. So the first individual, at least he goes, even though he does not do as much, he's not such an active person, he does get some reward. Now, what we said that he goes and he receives reward for going, that it's okay, in other words, there's some gain. This is on condition that he doesn't disturb others. There are people that go to the Bet HaKnesset and all they do is talk. And they talk Lashon Hara too. Not only did they not gain in that case, they actually made it worse for themselves and for others. So all of this is on condition that there's no hafra'ah, there's no disturbance. You want to just be there and keep quiet, fine. And Mishnah Berurah writes about those that bring little kids to the shul, and all they do is disturb others. Leave them at home. There's no mitzvah to bring small little kids if they will be disturbing. If they won't be disturbing, they will be sitting next to their dad, listening. Well, that's beautiful. Let them be inspired. Let them absorb the words of the Torah, of the Chazan, of the singing. That yes, but not if they bother. So unfortunately, there are people, and even amongst the women, there are certain individuals. The reason that they come to the shul is just to show off their new dress. I'm told about that. I haven't seen it because I don't go to the women's side, but I'm told by other women that that's the case. Well, you're better off staying at home than doing something like that. That's not the reason you come to the Bet HaKnesset. So when we say about schar halicha biyado, that there is some gain on condition that it was for the right things, not to disturb and not to, God forbid, get involved in some Lashon Hara and the like. We said eno oseh. This individual, eno oseh, does not necessarily mean he doesn't do anything at all. It could be that he does certain mitzvot, but he's not so motivated to do more. He just does the bare minimum. So we call him olech ve'en oseh because his ishtatfut, his involvement in Judaism, is in a low fire. In other words, here the Mishnah does not say it's bad. It just says he has some gain. He doesn't have the complete gain. But it's as we said before, it's better than nothing. Somebody that would go and would attend and would learn and would enrich himself, obviously he's an individual that is going to gain a lot more. There are people who are more active than others. Eno oseh could also mean, as we said before, it doesn't mean that he doesn't fulfill mitzvot, it just means that he doesn't contribute to the shul. He doesn't pay his dues, he doesn't help them out. He could be, he's a fine person. Just different kinds of people, different degrees of involvement. Obviously, this number one type of person has a little bit of good, but it's not complete. He's not as involved, he's not as active. The next one that we need to get to know is oseh ve'eno holech. Sechar ma'aseh biyado. There are individuals who actually do, who learn, fulfill mitzvot, but they're more like hermits. You know what a hermit is? They sit at home, they don't participate, they don't go anywhere, they learn on their own, they don't learn from others, they don't go to shurim, they think they know it all, or they can learn it on their own. This is not too good either, it's not complete. But we don't minimize it, as we said before, better something than nothing. Schar ma'aseh biyado. He has the ma'aseh. He's actually doing, he's actually learning, he's actually being perhaps a little bit charitable too. He just doesn't partake, doesn't come, doesn't involve himself so much. Why is this not so complete? Why can't a person just be a hermit? I mean, first of all, when it comes to learning, it is impossible for any Jew to know everything on his own, to learn everything on his own. There's so much that can be gained by learning from others, by learning with others, by listening to others. So, by not going, he's missing out a lot. By not going to a minyan, if this were to be a Bet HaKnesset, he's missing out on all the minyanim, on all the kadishim, on all the amenim. This is a tremendous loss. Obviously, some people are not aware. Even though they're fully 100% religious and observant, they don't understand what the value of every amen is, what the value of a kaddish and a minyan. They don't know. As I've said perhaps before, the prayer with the minyan is much more powerful than the prayer than when you're by yourself. Yes, you can pray by yourself, you have no choice. You're not feeling well, you're in a place where there is no minyan for some reason, you got there temporarily, you just happen to take a flight from here to Israel, a long flight, there's no minyan on the plane. Yes, it happens. But on a regular basis, you don't want to miss minyan because it makes a world of a difference in the prayer itself. Now, we're talking about, of course, a prayer with kavanah, with proper focus and understanding the words, and that makes the big difference. But even without the kavanah, the fact that it's with the minyan is worth so much. So here you have an individual who's okay, he's active partially, but he's not as involved, he doesn't go. So, schar ma'aseh biyado. He has a little bit of the ma'asim, he has a little bit of the deeds, but not more than that. And don't think that this is rare. I mean, you have such people. That's why he's listed over here. You have people who are not so interested in going to every shiur or attending a lecture. I mean, they think that they won't gain anything. They do everything right. They're good people. So all they have is schar ma'aseh. All the additional gain that they could have had potentially from going, they will miss out. So it's not so bad if I don't go. No, yes, it may not be bad, but what a loss. Well, in other words, that's the way to look at it. Yes, it may not be bad. You may be a good person. You may be doing everything right, but what a loss. It's a tremendous loss. You can't compare one who goes and participates and is involved and contributes, is active. It makes a world of a difference. But there are people who want to do the very least possible. And we talked about those people in the past. They just want to be latzet yedei chova, just to meet their obligations, not more than that. There's a story with Hillel and Shammai, another ger, a convert who wanted to convert. And this one said to Shammai, how many Torah do you have? Torah? He says, we have two. We have the written, we have the oral. Well, convert me, I just want to learn the written one. I don't want to learn the oral one. So Shammai, as you know, he was a strict man, says, get lost. I don't want to see you. You don't separate between Torah Shebechtav and Torah Shebal Peh. They go together. You can't have one without the other. You need the oral Torah, otherwise you can't understand the written Torah. Anyway, he went to Hillel. Hillel says, you want to learn the written Torah? Fine. Okay. So he starts off teaching him the Aleph Bet. Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet. Hey, these are the letters. Can you repeat after me? Yes, says, this is Aleph, this is Bet, this is Gimel. Very nice. Let's continue tomorrow. Tomorrow the Ger came to him, and Hillel started with Aleph Bet Gimel. But Aleph, he says, this is Gimel. And Dalet, he says, this is Bet. Hey, this is Aleph. So he says, Rabbi, you didn't teach me that yesterday. You told me exactly the opposite. You called them different things, and now you're teaching me something different. So Hillel says, you see, you trust me on the Aleph Bet yesterday that I was telling you the truth. Then you trust me with the Torah Shebal Peh as well. Okay? What's Torah Shebal Peh? Because people have a problem. Oh, the Chachamim made it up. They made up Torah Shebal Peh. They got together, they had a meeting, and they made up the oral word. Torah Shebechtav, yes, Moses gave that. That I believe, but this, they made it up. You trusted me with this. You're trusting me that I'm teaching you the Torah Shebechtav. This is the real thing. This you trust me? Then trust me as well with the rest of what I will teach you. It's the same. It's from the same source. It comes from the exact same source. So some people have some sort of an issue with this part of the Torah, not this part of the Torah. This I will do. This I will not do. This I will learn. This I will not learn. It's not necessarily the type of individual that we're talking about. It's very similar because all he does is he learns and he chooses to learn what he wants to learn. But what about that which is being taught? You don't know everything. There's always something to learn from people. So here you have a oseh ve'eno holech. He will have schar ma'aseh biyado. Obviously he will gain. He will gain in olam haba. They will reward him from that. But that's all he has. He misses out on a great deal. You have with the oseh ve'eno holech, it could also be applied to tzedakot and to many areas of Jewish life, not necessarily with learning only. You have an individual who is very charitable and does a lot of good deeds, he does a lot of chesed, he's kind to others, but he just doesn't go to the Bet Midrash. So we're not minimizing him. Yes, he has schar ma'aseh biyado. But his Judaism is very much limited to just that one area. So it's a shame. It's just incomplete. He's rewarded, but it's limited. Why limit yourself? And I hear this from time to time from people who say, yeah, I'm a good Jew at heart, I help everybody, I give tzedakah, and so forth. But he doesn't go to the Bet Midrash, he doesn't go to Bet Knesset, he doesn't really get involved. He misses out so much. So yes, schar ma'aseh biyado, but that's all. It's incomplete. He's really not maximizing his real potential. He can gain so much more in olam hazeh and in olam haba. All right, the next one, the third one, holech ve'oseh hasid. Holech ve'oseh is called a hasid. What does that mean? Holech means he goes, he attends. Oseh means he does, he performs. He's active, he's involved. He's a hasid. What makes him a hasid? As we've explained, the past hasid is an individual who does more and above his call of duty. Because a person who does everything right is a tzaddik, he's righteous. Hasid means he's more and above. He's a very good person. He doesn't think of himself, he thinks of others first. That's called hasid. It's in some ways a higher level than just a plain tzaddik. So he's called a hasid. Why is he called a hasid? What makes him a hasid? Just by going, by being active, by doing? In reality, what the rabbis are telling us is an individual who has the right attitude and surrounds himself with Torah, with prayer, with mitzvot, with ma'asim tovim, with tzedakah. His day is completely immersed in pursuing the right thing, in being involved in Jewish life, then he eventually can become a Hasid because he has all the tools to become a Hasid. He will be attending lectures, he will be hearing inspiring words, He will be reading good books, hopefully. I mean, he'll surround himself with good people. He will attend the Bet Knesset on a regular basis. All of that does something to you. It definitely has an impact. You know, people absorb from their surroundings, either the good or the bad. So by being around good people or being around good places, you absorb. Now, we'll talk about in the next Mishnah, what do you do when you're around bad people? What do you do when you're in bad places? Since people absorb. So we'll get to that in a moment. But right now we're talking about just the Bet Midrash. Bet Midrash being an essential part of a Jew's life. You can't just say once a year. And we all know here, people like that, once a year they'll be in the Bishul. We see them once a year, Yom Kippur. It's very nice. It shows that they respect a little bit, you know. But what a shame, what a loss. Imagine somebody like that, if they would have come on a regular basis, they would be different people. They would be I guarantee it, they would be different people. He would be a changed person, a person that comes to a shiur every morning, stays around for 15 minutes. You know how much he gains from Torah? And multiply that by 360 or 65, depends, how many days he comes of the year. We have holidays and people are away. So over 360 days a year, 10, 15 minutes every day, it makes a world of a difference. It enriches him, it guides him, it strengthens us, it gives us the power to deal with the Yetzer Hara. There's so much to gain from going and doing. So holech ve'oseh hasid. It demonstrates that this is his life. He cares about it so much. He's not just interested in fulfilling his bare minimum obligation. Right? So one who's not just, I went yesterday, I don't have to go every day. People think like that. Whoever said I have to go every day? Show me I have to go every day. What does it say that? It doesn't say that anywhere. It doesn't say you have to. Of course not. But we know the value of it. You know the value of it. Imagine, I just thought of it. I have a great idea. Imagine you tell people, you publicize it. Every day for the following week, Ralph's is giving out a free chicken for anybody who enters the store. Ralph's just made everything kosher. A whole corner kosher, I should say, in this Ralph's on 3rd Street. Did you know about that? Oh yeah, they made a whole section of the store kosher. You could buy chicken there, all kinds of meats. Oh, it's a big thing. This one right here, this one on 3rd Street. So imagine Ralph's wants you to get you to go there. Every day you come, you get a free chicken. One per household. How many people would go? A lot. A whole chicken for free. Rotisserie chicken. Yeah, why not? Free. People go for a chicken. What if they told you every day you come in, you get 5 pounds of steak, free? You get even more people. Even the vegetarians would come. For free. I'm sure they'd find somebody to give it to. So imagine. So for this, people are willing to go, and not for shiur, because they don't know the value of it. It's chavad. What a shame. You're getting it for free. You don't have to pay. Come to the Bet Knesset. So holech ve'oseh, a person that goes, schar ma'aseh chasid. He's a chasid because by going continuously, regularly, he has the right attitude, he has the right approach. He has what it takes to become a chasid. He will eventually become a good person. A good person, not just in the sense of his nature. There are a lot of people, good-natured people by nature, but a good person involved in good deeds all around. Then you have number 4. Lo olech v'lo oseh rasha. Wow. Here we're seeing just the opposite. We're seeing that you can't say that there's something to gain. There's nothing to gain from a person. Lo olech v'lo oseh. He's even called a rasha. He doesn't go. He's not involved. Doesn't do anything. He's a rasha. Why is he rasha? It's important to keep in mind this Mishnah is not talking about just one who's ignorant. I would venture to say that this Mishnah is talking about somebody who does not want to go, does not want to be involved. So I would add the word lo rotzeh lalechet. Lo olech velo oseh, because he's ignorant, doesn't make him a rasha. Makes him a haaretz. Maybe he's an ignoramus. Maybe he's not aware. But lo olech velo oseh, to be a rasha, means a person knows, person is aware, doesn't want to. Oh, that's no good. That's not a good attitude. Why not? Why doesn't he want to? Well, you have a lot of reasons why people don't want to. The one that's really a problem, a real problem, is the people who are afraid. They're afraid of actually becoming convinced that this is good, that this is true. They're actually afraid of being convinced. So therefore they refuse to listen to a shiur. They refuse. You give it to them for free. Why don't you listen to this lecture? I don't want to. I don't have the time for it. I don't care about it. It doesn't interest me. What you don't know is that behind that refusal there is a certain fear. Psychological fear of something underlying his refusal that says, no, I don't want to. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that what I hear will convince me. I don't want to be convinced. I'm happy the way I am. You know, there's a lot of people like that. There really are. They have people who don't want to send their kids to Jewish school because they're afraid their kids are going to be more religious than them, and it's going to upset the home, the level of religion at home. You know, so they're afraid. They don't want these conflicts. Now, I don't blame them for not having conflicts, but their reasoning is bad. So he's called a rasha. He's called Rasha because he refuses, because he's not interested, even though he knows it's good, even though he knows it's the truth. So you have individuals like that who simply show no interest whatsoever. There's a story with Rabbi Salante, Zechet Tzadik Lebracha. He once was in a German town, and during his time there was unfortunately an upsurge of Jews who were unfortunately becoming distant from Judaism, had no interest in learning about Judaism, were becoming very secular. So he once approached one of those Jews, a student. He was a student in some university, I think. And they got into a conversation about Torah. So the student begins to tell the Rabbi, I want you to hear something. I want you to hear my opposition to all this learning business. And he starts giving him a whole lecture about his opposition to learning Torah, about learning Talmud. And the Rabbi says, stop. I don't want to hear your whole dissertation. I don't want to hear you. Everything you have to say. I first want to ask you a question. Before I hear what you have to say. Do you know what Judaism is? And the student all of a sudden became red in his face. He was completely ashamed. He knew nothing. And he admitted it. He says, Rabbi, I don't know too much about it. At least he admitted it. Here's somebody who has a whole speech on why he's opposed to learning and doesn't even know what it is. Come and learn. Come and absorb, come and see for yourself what it is. And then if you have some questions, you have some issues with it, welcome to hear it. You know, that's what it's all about, is to exchange views, you know, for those who are still having doubts. And hopefully they'll gain clarity after they've posed their questions to the right people. But to not learn it at all, to not be interested in it, especially since this is your heritage. I mean, this is what your great-great-grandparents gave their lives for. What's the excuse for that? So deep down, obviously, there's some opposition to it, but it's not very justified. It's nonsense. It's either fear of knowing the truth or complete ignorance, like this guy, and coming up with some sort of opposition because of what they heard from others or what they picked up in the newspaper. It's nothing tangible. And you have a lot of those, a lot of who do not know anything, and all of a sudden, you know, they start giving you speeches. And this is, by the way, true about Israel too. A lot of people, including many Americans, they tell you all this. They give you speeches about how Israel should give up their land and how Israel doesn't belong there, and how how they should make peace, and they know very little about Jewish history. They know very little about, how long the Jewish people have been there, their attachment to that land, and so their opinion is really worthless, because how could you give an opinion on a topic that you don't know anything about? So Judaism is not just any topic. This is our heritage, the heritage of every single Jew, not just some Jews. And to not be involved, not to care about it, it shows Rasha. But the title of Rasha is really reserved for people who are really, really no good. So we have to understand who is he talking about. Just for not wanting to, just for not being involved, does not make him Rasha. So there's more to that. To give you an example of what a Rasha is, I read a story once of an appeal that was made during the Holocaust years, I think it was. It was made in the shul, an appeal to collect money for all those Jews who were in the camps. And somebody gave a very moving presentation about the importance of this, how important of a cause this is. And a lot of people cried and were moved by it, and they all began to contribute towards this appeal. There was one guy sitting at the front row who didn't give anything. So one of the rabbis, after the presentation, went over to him and said, I'm curious, why didn't you give something? What did he answer? I'm not a member of this synagogue. I'm not a member of this synagogue, he says. That's a Rasha. You're not a member of the Jewish people who are in trouble? You're not interested in saving Jewish lives? What does that have to do with the synagogue? Yes, this may not be your synagogue, but what does that have to do with anything? We're not collecting for the synagogue, we're collecting for the Jewish people. They say in English that's called a cop-out, something like that. Why? That's not even a cop-out, it's Rasha. That's the only word for him. You're a part of the Jewish people. You're a member of the Jewish nation. This is a valuable cause, it's a true cause. Look how everybody else is contributing. Because they care. You don't care? That's called Rasha. So lo lech velo aseh Rasha. A person who totally is uninvolved means he doesn't care. He doesn't care. That's the midah of Rasha. You do have, however, the very, very ignorant people. And they fit more of the category of ignorant than Rasha, but nonetheless they're very close. They've lost their sensitivity, in a sense. I'll tell you a story with my grandfather in Brazil that is incredible. But you know what? It's incredible, but it's not impossible. It happens. I'm sure it can happen to anybody in any community in the world. My grandfather, Alav Shalom, was very involved in supporting the Jewish community where he lived in Brazil. And he took it upon himself to raise money for a school. Schools need money to pay for the teacher, the principals, the students couldn't come up with all the tuition. So this was a very important Talmud Torah, the only really religious school in Rio de Janeiro back then. We're talking about the late 50s, early 60s. So the community was growing, they needed money. So my grandfather approached a friend of his, somebody that he knew, a very wealthy individual. He says, can you please contribute for the school? He says, come on. He called him by his name, Beryl. He says, what are you trying to collect for here? Talmud Torah. We don't need these things. These things are antiquated. We had those in Europe. We don't need them anymore. There's no need for it whatsoever. Well, why waste your time to collect for such a cause? It's a waste of your time. It's not necessary. It's not important at all. So my grandfather tells him, I heard your daughter is getting married. Mazal tov, mazal tov. Yes, that's true. Oh, by the way, in which church is she getting married? So he takes a look at it. What? What did you say? Church? Chas v'shalom. My daughter is married to a church. What made you think that? She said, Baruch Hashem, she's getting married in the big shul. And by the way, which cardinal will it be that will make her kiddushin? Cardinal? What are you talking about, cardinal? A rabbi, the rabbi so-and-so is going to perform the marriage. And by the way, when she has a boy, is there going to be a Brit Milah? He says, what are you talking? What happened to you? Are you out of your mind? Of course, Bezrat Hashem, there will be a Brit Milah. He says, so listen to what you've just said. My grandfather tells him. You said that she's going to be married in a shul. There will be a rabbi. There will be circumcision. If there is no Talmud Torah, there's no rabbis. There's no Mohalim. There's no Bet Knesset. Finito. Right? That is why we need to support the Talmud Torah. That's exactly the reason why we need to support places of learning. So we should have rabbis. So we should have Mohalim. So we should have Jewish life. Don't you realize that? Don't you know? So apparently it hit home, as they say. He finally understood that. And he gave him some help. Think of it, Some people say, oh, what do we need this for? They minimize it. And because they minimize it, they lose out. They don't contribute. And they don't contribute, so they're not involved either. They don't get anything out of it, and the community doesn't get anything out of them. Everybody loses. So it's ignorance too. But the Mishnah calls it a rasha, especially for those who are aware. Those who are aware, listen, how could you not contribute to something that is the lifeline of the Jewish community? All right, the next Mishnah, Arba midot beyoshvei lifnei chachamim. This one is a little bit of a funny Mishnah. Every time I go through it, I think it's a little bit humorous. You'll see why in a moment. 4 kinds of yoshvei lifnei chachamim that sit before the chachamim. Now, previously, Mishnah Yud Bet, we learned about talents, different talents and skills. Some students are better in retaining information than others. Others are quick learners. They don't retain well. Remember, if you remember that Mishnah, there are different abilities and aptitudes in scholastics, in how people learn and how people retain. This one is a little bit different. This Mishnah deals with how individuals process information. There's a lot of information to be processed. How do you process it? How do you know what to keep and what to filter out? Because we're always absorbing information, good and bad. As we said before, what does a person do when he's around surroundings that are not so good? He's going to be processing and absorbing information. So it is important not only to retain and not only to learn certain things, but it's also important to filter out the bad from the good. So you have 4 kinds of students, 4 kinds of individuals that will attend the shiur. One is called a sfog, a sponge. One is called a mashpech, a funnel. You know what a funnel is, right? One is called a mashmeret, a strainer. V'nafa, and one is called a sieve. And I'm going to explain each one. But you know the terms, right? Strainer, sieve are similar, but there's a little bit of a difference between them. Sfog, a sponge. What's a sponge? Sponge absorbs everything. He absorbs the good and the bad. What could there be bad? It says here, Yoshvei lifnei chachamim. So it doesn't necessarily mean the bad, it means the trivial. There's a lot of things that sometimes are said, even in a class, that are trivial, not so important. There's sometimes even a joke that's being told just to keep everybody awake. There are some people who just remember everything, the good and the not so good, the important and the trivial. That's the way they are. They lack proper understanding and realizing that this is not so important, this is trivial, get it out of your mind. They hear a lot and they just absorb everything. Now this is not just in school, even though it says Lifnei Chachamim, it could also be at home. It could be somebody that absorbed a lot at home, good and bad. And as a result of absorbing the bad, he takes it with him when he becomes a parent, and that's no good. Just because you grew up with it, hopefully, you should be able to know what to filter out. I'm not going to keep this. Some are very good at doing that. Even though they live through very difficult circumstances, They say, I'm not going to be like that with my kids. And some just carry on with it. Broken homes, sometimes broken children. And broken children, again, broken homes. Their homes. Because psychologically, the impression is there. It's hard to remove. It is hard to remove. Nonetheless, it can be removed with proper treatment and proper guidance. You don't have to take it with you. You don't have to take everything with you. One has to see the difference between that which is acceptable, that which is not acceptable, that which is positive, and that which is negative. So you don't have to be a sfog of absorbing everything, all the nuances and all the customs and all the everything, the mannerisms. No, unless it's good, of course. But all the bad, all the negative, leave behind. But that's one type of individual. That's the nature of some people, that they just absorb everything. This is also the characteristic of journalists. They want to rush to hear a good story, and they don't filter out what is true from what is a lie or an exaggeration. They just are thirsty for a juicy story, and they don't. Wait a minute, but this is not true. This is just a rumor. This is what hearsay. This is, it's not true. They don't care. They want to sell a good story. They make money on this. They want to be the first ones. So they're not careful enough to filter out the good from the bad, the truth from the lies. That's called a sfog. Mashpech. Mashpech is a funnel. What's a funnel? It has a big opening on the top and it has a smaller opening at the bottom. You pour, when you want to pour, a lot of wine into a bottle, the bottle has a small opening, so you want to use a mashpech. Otherwise, you're going to pour all over the place, spill all, right? So use a funnel to pour from one container, a bigger container, into a smaller container. So mashpech is just the opposite of a sfog in a sense. It goes into one ear, it goes out in the other ear. Basically, that's what it's telling us. Lo sofeg klum. It's not able to absorb anything at all. Now, you may say, well, it's not his fault that he's not able to keep anything. Yes and no. Even though we said before that there are people whose nature is like this, one of the reasons why people act like mashpechim sometimes is because they've already stuffed up their minds with all kinds of vanities, all kinds of shtuyot, and therefore there's no more room for the Torah. There's no more room for other things that should interest them. There's no such thing that somebody cannot retain a little bit. The fact that he's acting as a funnel, goes through, it means that something is preventing it from sticking. So even though this is a type of individual, this is a nature, it doesn't have to remain like that. As we will talk about it later, people don't have to be just one or not the other. So mashpech machnis bezu botzi bezu. So sofeg absorbed everything. This one, in a sense, didn't keep anything. Also, not so good. Now, how does that apply to one's parents, the mashpech? Sfog, remember we just said that he absorbed everything, the good and the bad. What could be a mashpech? Mashpech could be he received a lot from his parents, but he feels it's old-fashioned, like the guy we said before. We don't need this anymore. So it went in and it went out. In other words, if a person has the wrong attitude about what he received, he doesn't respect his parents, he won't respect their tradition. So you can have a mashpech not only among students, again, we have these examples in the home too, that he's acting like a funnel of absorbing, but just letting it flow out. Chabal. This could also be, by the way, with money. Imagine a son inherited a lot of money and he wastes it all. He doesn't know how to keep it. He gets it, and he throws it out. I'm sure you know people like that. They don't know how to hold on to it. So a mashpech could be in various areas of life. One that has a hard time holding something which should be held. And then we have the mashmeret. Mashmeret shemotziah et hayayin vekoletet et hashmarim. It's a strainer. What does a strainer do? A strainer's job function usually is to strain out the good, that which you want, usually, and to retain the sediment, that which you don't want. Okay? The difference between the mashmeret and the napa is usually the mashmeret, here he wrote as a mashmeret. Usually the mashmeret takes out the good and retains the bad. The napa is the opposite. It retains the good and takes out the bad. So let's first talk about mashmeret. Motziah et hayayin koletet et hashmarim. Okay. All the good comes out, all the bad is retained in him. All the jokes, all the lashon hara, all the politics he hears, that's what he keeps it. All the good that he may have picked up from a shiur, that is lost. You've heard halachot too. You heard gemarot, you heard midrashim, you heard so much good things when you went to learn. You only picked up and retained all the jokes and all the politics and all the shtuyot, all the nonsense, all the trivial things. So you have this kind of individuals that's where they thrive. They have fun. That's what they remember. All the bad stuff, all the trivial stuff, and all the good, they just let it go out. Where do you see this in life? Unfortunately, this one is very, very prevalent. You have children who grew up in a home that was pretty traditional. Pretty traditional, they kept everything. May not have been the strongest home, but they kept everything. And look what happened to them. They inherited a Chanukiah, but they don't light it. Instead, when Chanukah comes, they're going to have latkes, and they're going to play cards. And they have to have the latkes. You know, the latkes? Yeah. So Chanukah, no lighting the Chanukiah. Instead, they'll play cards, and they'll have latkes. With sour cream, maybe, or with applesauce. Whatever you have. Purim is next week, right? What are they going to do for Purim? They have to have their hamantashen. Oh, they can't do without hamantashen. But will they listen to the Megillah or do anything else? Mishloach manot, machzit hashekel? No. None of the other customs. But the hamantashen, yeah. Shavuot. Oh, Baruch Hashem, it's Shavuot. We're going to have blintzes. You know, cheese blintzes. That's all what Shavuot is for them. Pesach, we forgot Pesach. Pesach, they'll have the matzah, of course, the matzah all over the house. But what about the seder? What about the cleaning the house, kashering the house? No, none of that. And what about every Shabbat? Every Shabbat they'll have gefilte fish and chicken soup. But that's all. So they are meshameret, or mashmeret. In other words, all the good is lost, is strained out. The less important things are retained. Even though gefilte fish is important, but but it's trivial compared to the rest of Shabbat, right? You see how this mashmeret works? They're just retaining the secondary things, the less important things, and they're filtering out or straining out or losing all the good stuff. They can't hold on to it. Then you have the napa. Napa motziah et hakemach vekoletet et hasolet. It will allow the dust of the flour, that which we don't want, to come out, but the sieve will collect the solet, the fine flour. So the sieve works different than the strainer. It will retain or hold that which you want and leave out that which you want expelled, that which you do not want to hold on to. Whereas the mashmeret, you're straining out the good and holding back the sediments, right, the bad. So the napa is good. The napa is the best one. It is able to distinguish between good and bad. It is able to retain only the good, only the solid, and leave out all the psolet, all the impurities. Right? This is a good individual. This one has the right attitude. This one is careful in what he retains, and this one is able to distinguish between right and wrong. He's careful. He doesn't just take things the way they are. He analyzes further. He realizes that in life there are all kinds of people, all kinds of situations, and you got to be careful and sometimes make decisions and choose between the right and the wrong. In other words, it's not just a matter of absorbing everything and just be like everybody else. It's being careful and filtering, because, as we said before, we absorb all the time. You don't want to be mashpech either. You don't want to be the sfog either, or the mashmeret. Napa, you want to aim to be a napa, because this is ultimately the best way of preserving your Jewishness. We have kelim. We were given vessels in which to preserve our Jewish traditions, and so we can give them over to the next generation. We don't want it to be diluted, but we do want it to be filtered from the bad, not from the good. We want to retain the emunah. We want to retain the devotion, the excitement, all the good things that were always there from the previous generation. So that's what a napa does. Napa is an attitude that says, I realize there may be impurities out there. I need to be careful. And after all, I'm transmitting this to the next generation. So therefore, I need to know what I'm doing. There's one commentary, however, that says that all of these four are good for the following reason. Even though we spoke about four different kinds of individuals in how they interact in class, in the Bet Midrash, in what they learn, these four could also be good if they apply to Torah. If they apply to Torah, then we need all four. You have those that are very, very capable and they absorb. They're excellent in absorbing knowledge, but they don't know how to teach it. Not everybody who's knowledgeable knows how to give it over, and knows how to clarify it, and knows how to simplify it. So there's a sfog, but nevertheless we need him because he has a very good memory. He's able to retain everything. Was even the small things that are not so important, but still, he knows everything. Then you have the mashpech. You have a mashpech. You have an individual who's able to take all that information and funnel it through to smaller bottles. People who cannot absorb so much. And he does a beautiful job in giving it over and transmitting the information. So I like this interpretation too, because this is true. You have that capability. Some people have that aptitude in being a mashpech, being a funnel in a good sense of taking all that large amount of Torah and funneling it to smaller bottles. Then you have the mashmeret of individuals who who will only give over the wine and not the sediment. So here, this interpretation looks at a positive aspect of the strainer. It will only allow the wine to flow, but it won't give them the sediment. You know where this is important today? We'll get to that in a minute. I'll show you where this mashmeret applies. But in teaching, in general, a person has to be careful to make sure that he gives over the more important areas of learning and leaves out those things that are not necessarily that applicable, perhaps, or relevant, or that necessary, so as not to confuse individuals too much with too much information. So he's able to give over the more important and leave out that which is less important. That's called mashmir, but we'll get to another detail soon. And then you have the napa. The napa means he's able to filter out the good and leave out that which is totally not only not good, but impurities. He's able to be minapeh. He's able to summarize everything and give it over in such a way that everybody can benefit from. A good example of a napa in this sense would be the Sefer Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The Sefer Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is a compendium, a summary of all the halachot of the Shulchan Aruch, which is a vast work of halakha. Not everybody can learn the entire Shulchan Aruch. So came along Rav Shlomo Gansfried Zecher Tzadik V'Bracha, and made a small, a kitzur, a summary of the Shulchan Aruch, and made a napa. In other words, he took out the more important and the more relevant halachot and gave it over to people in a written form. So whether you're speaking, whether you're teaching, whether you're writing, to be an napa is very important because some people just cannot handle so much. You have to know to abridge it and to keep out that which is not that relevant, and that the Talmidei Chachamim, the big rabbis, will learn it anyway. But for the Hamon Am, for the general populace, give them the ikar, the more important one. So you can see how all those four can apply to rabbis and teachers in using each tool for its purpose. Important also to keep in mind that when we're talking with people in conversations, not just in learning, in conversations we tend to sometimes say things that should not be said or hear things that should not be said. In L'chot Lashon Hara, there is a concept called lo lekabel Lashon Hara. It's not only prohibited to speak Lashon Hara, it's also prohibited to accept or to hear Lashon Hara. Very important idea that unfortunately a lot of people are not careful today. We hear all kinds of things that are wrong, that are bad, that should not be said about other individuals. That's called Lashon Hara. We're not talking about sheker, lies necessarily. Things that are negative can constitute Lashon Hara many, many times. It is Lashon Hara. Sometimes you need to hear something because you're becoming his partner, so you need to know that's something else. But generally speaking, you have to be very careful with being mekabel. And lo mekabel Lashon Hara means I don't accept what you're saying, I don't want to believe it, I don't want to hear it, because it's asur to receive it. After all, when we hear, we absorb, and when we absorb, we're influenced. So you don't want to be influenced by negative remarks. All right, and last but not least, we've heard all kinds of midot here. All kinds of midot. It doesn't mean that people who have or are these midot are stuck or remain like that. They can change. Or, even though they cannot necessarily be completely opposite to what they are, they can actually use every one of these four, I would like to suggest, in a good way. Every one of these four can be used in a good way. So in other words, even though we're not asking people to just change, that's the way people really are, even though they have to be careful in being, in filtering and so forth, nevertheless, I think that these four can actually be all applied by every one of us. Sfog, the sponge, can be applied with learning Torah. We should absorb as much as we can, learn as much as we can, and retain, of course, as much as we can by reviewing the Torah. So that sfog can be applied to every one of us. The next one, the mashpech, is also a valuable tool that we can also use by sharing with others what we've learned, by giving over to them, not necessarily teaching them, but sharing with them, even convincing them to come to a class. That could be a mashpech. So mashpech means that I don't retain and learn everything just for myself. I also give it and share it with others. Very valuable too. Then we have the mashmeret that I said earlier. A mashmeret is something that can be very, very handy these days, especially that we have internet. We need to have a constant mashmeret, which is a filter, to know what to block out. There's a lot of good things there. Yes, there are good things, especially if you rely for it for a living. You want to be a mashmeret in a sense that you only take out from it the good that you can get, but you leave out, and you block it out, and you leave behind all this stuff that needs to be filtered. So, yes, in life there are times that we come across situations where we have to use the mashmeret to filter out. Otherwise, it's going to affect us. We're all impressionable, and nobody should say that he's not impressionable. It can definitely have a negative impression on individuals. And then last but not least is the napa. We have to constantly use the napa, the sieve, in our speech, in our midot, to refine them. Napa can be used as a sieve, meaning to refine. A refinery. Well, just like fuel is refined more and more and more, depending on what it's going to be used for, our speech has to be refined, which means that we weigh our words. We don't just say anything that we think of, what we want to talk about. We watch what we say, and of course with the midot, with our behavior. that even though people have certain tendencies, they're born with certain inclinations, it doesn't mean that they always have to be that. There's always a constant need to be a minapeh, that one should always refine himself. This could be in his way he deals with people, between husband and wife, just in general. It's a constant thing that we need to do. People are not just born as angels. If you're an angel, you belong with the angels. We're not angels, we're not born at least like that, but you can become purer. You can become pure. Yeah. Tzaddikim have become pure. We have tremendous stories of great people who did become pure. Then why can't we? If they could do it, we could also. Of course, they have a tremendous lofty neshama, a tremendous lofty soul, and a tremendous siyata deshmaya, and they've reached high levels, but it doesn't mean we can't get close to that. If you don't want to, then you're never going to get there. A person, therefore, has to strive to always be a better person, a finer person. And if he strives, there's no doubt that he will be able to be, as we said before, a Hasid. A Hasid is a level that everybody could attain, and that is, of course, an individual that carries all the good midot of all the individuals that we mentioned. In other words, because he cares, he wants to be involved, he wants to contribute, he wants to listen, he realizes that he's there he has clarity, but that clarity can only be gained after we filter out all the shtuyot. A lot of times people are really good, they're really, really nice people, but their heads is so bombarded with so much impurities and contamination that they can't see straight, they can't think straight. So step number one, that's why, step number one and step number four, I mean, it's all around you. Napa, therefore, is a very, very powerful tool to continuously and regularly strain out, sieve, and refine all the impurities out of so that we should be able to have complete clarity in our Avodat Hashem. Amen.